dramatic claim is now circulating in geopolitical circles, and if true, it could mark one of the most dangerous turning points in recent Middle East tensions. According to reports attributed to Israeli journalist Barak Ravid, known for close access to high-level security sources, a detailed strike proposal has allegedly been presented to former U.S. President Donald Trump targeting Iran's top leadership. The reported outline suggests simultaneous action against Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei and his son Mujtaba Khamenei, based on the belief that eliminating only one figure would leave succession intact and potentially intensify retaliation. The strategy, as described in these claims, mirrors past decapitation-style operations where multiple layers of leadership were targeted to prevent immediate continuity of command. It further suggests coordinated roles involving Israeli operational support alongside U.S. planning structures such as the Pentagon. The logic behind such a proposal reportedly centers on preventing a rapid transfer of authority that could sustain or escalate confrontation. However, analysts warn that any move of this magnitude would risk triggering severe regional backlash, expanding far beyond a limited strike scenario. Questions are also being raised about internal stability, command resilience, and whether such an action could ignite a far broader military response involving missile systems, maritime choke points, and allied actors. At this stage, these remain reported claims rather than confirmed policy decisions, but their implications are enormous. If you want balanced, in-depth analysis of developments like this, make sure to subscribe for updates, thumbs up like this video to support factual discussion, and speech balloon comment below, do you believe such a strategy would deter conflict or dangerously escalate it? Beyond the headline claims, the deeper strategic question revolves around what would follow if such a leadership-focused operation were attempted. Analysts examining the reported outline suggest the objective would not only be symbolic but structural, disrupting continuity at the highest levels of authority inside Iran. The discussion reportedly centers on preventing an immediate succession scenario involving the supreme leader Ali Khamenei and his son Mujtaba Khamenei, based on the assumption that ideological and operational direction would otherwise remain unchanged. Comparisons are frequently drawn to past targeted operations, including the strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, where the expectation was that removing a central figure would weaken coordination networks. However, history shows such actions can produce mixed outcomes, sometimes strengthening resolve rather than diminishing it. Military observers point out that any escalation would have to account for layered retaliation capabilities, including ballistic missile systems, drone fleets, and asymmetric regional partnerships. Strategic waterways such as the Strait of Hormuz would immediately enter the risk equation, with even temporary disruption capable of shaking global energy markets. Cyber operations could unfold simultaneously, targeting navigation systems, communication grids, or financial infrastructure, complicating attribution and response. Another factor is internal resilience, whether command chains could reorganize rapidly under pressure or fragment in crisis. Some reports emphasize Iran's previous ability to relocate senior figures during high-threat moments, suggesting protective mechanisms are already embedded within the system. Ultimately, the scenario underscores how leadership targeting is never just a tactical decision, it reshapes deterrence, alliance behavior, and regional stability calculations in ways that extend far beyond a single operation. What makes this moment especially dangerous is not just the reported targeting plan itself, but the scale of retaliation that could follow within minutes. Military analysts warn that if Iran's top leadership were directly threatened, response doctrines would likely shift from calculated restraint to maximum deterrent force. Iran's strategic framework has long emphasized layered retaliation, combining ballistic missiles, drone swarms, regional allied networks, and cyber capabilities into a synchronized reaction. The survival of the supreme leader Ali Khamenei is widely viewed as central to national stability, meaning any perceived decapitation attempt could unify political and military factions rather than divide them. Previous events, including the killing of Qasem Soleimani, demonstrated how quickly calibrated responses can be executed against high-value targets. In a broader escalation scenario, U.S. regional bases, naval deployments, and surveillance assets could become part of the deterrence equation, forcing rapid defensive calculations inside institutions like the Pentagon. Strategic choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz would immediately rise in importance, with even temporary disruption capable of sending oil prices soaring and rattling global markets. Cyber dimensions would likely activate simultaneously, targeting radar systems, GPS infrastructure, and communications grids to create confusion before physical exchanges intensify. The central risk lies in speed. Once escalation begins, decision windows shrink dramatically, leaving little space for diplomatic correction. In such high-alert environments, perception can become as powerful as action, where even defensive measures are interpreted as offensive signals. That dynamic is what turns a reported strike plan into a potential regional tipping point with consequences far beyond the immediate battlefield. As this high-stakes narrative unfolds, the most critical layer may not be the strike itself but the battle over systems and survival in the opening moments. Defense analysts argue that if a first wave were launched, the immediate objective would likely be to disable radar networks, jam communications, and neutralize missile coordination before any organized response could begin. For Iran, preserving command continuity around the supreme leader Ali Khamenei would be seen as essential to maintaining strategic cohesion. Equally important would be preventing disruption of navigation and targeting infrastructure, including alternatives to Western positioning systems such as China's Beidou network, which Tehran has increasingly referenced in discussions of technological resilience. The ability to keep missile systems functional, avoid electronic jamming, and maintain secure internal communications would define whether deterrence collapses or holds. Observers point to previous crisis moments when rapid relocation and underground security protocols reportedly protected senior figures from harm, suggesting contingency layers already exist. However, modern warfare extends beyond physical strikes. Cyber offensives aimed at energy grids, satellite links, and defense databases could unfold simultaneously, complicating real-time assessments. External actors, including regional powers and global competitors, would closely monitor performance of both hardware and command discipline under pressure. Even a temporary system's failure could reshape momentum within hours, shifting psychological advantage. At the same time, any visible survival of leadership structures would likely be framed domestically as strategic resilience, strengthening internal unity rather than weakening it. This intersection of technology, succession, and deterrence is what transforms reported planning into a broader geopolitical stress test, where the outcome would hinge not only on firepower. The final and perhaps most unpredictable dimension of this crisis lies in what happens after the first exchange, because history shows that leadership-targeted strategies rarely end conflicts, they often redefine them. If an attempt were made against the upper command structure surrounding the supreme leader Ali Khamenei, the immediate question would not only be survival but succession and consolidation. Iran's political system does not function on a simple inheritance model, yet figures such as Mojtaba Khamenei are frequently discussed in succession debates, creating a complex mix of religious authority, military loyalty, and internal legitimacy. Removing multiple tiers of leadership simultaneously, as some reports speculate, would aim to prevent rapid replacement, similar in logic to previous high-profile eliminations like Qasem Soleimani. However, the strategic gamble is enormous. Power vacuums can fragment systems, but they can also radicalize them, accelerating retaliation through conventional missiles, proxy networks, or maritime disruption. Regional groups aligned with Tehran could interpret such a move as an existential trigger, expanding confrontation beyond national borders. Financial markets would likely react within minutes, while defense networks across neighboring states would elevate alert levels. The psychological dimension cannot be ignored either. When leadership survival becomes symbolic of national resistance, domestic cohesion often strengthens rather than weakens. In that environment, deterrence becomes more fragile, as each side calculates credibility through action rather than restraint. Ultimately, the risk is not confined to one strike or one response, it is the cascading effect of decisions made under extreme pressure, where escalation paths multiply rapidly and reversing momentum becomes exponentially harder with each passing hour. As the narrative reaches its most critical stage, the defining question is no longer whether tensions exist, but whether they can be contained before crossing a point of no return. Any direct move against the core leadership structure surrounding the supreme leader Ali Khamenei would transform a shadow confrontation into an openly declared strategic clash. Military observers emphasize that Iran has repeatedly signaled it does not seek a preemptive war, yet it frames retaliation as inevitable if directly attacked. That distinction is crucial, because deterrence relies on perception, the belief that response capability remains intact. If missile reserves, radar grids, and communication systems survive an opening strike, the balance could shift rapidly. Strategic waterways like the Strait of Hormuz would immediately become focal points, with even limited disruption capable of rattling global energy flows and financial stability. Regional deployments involving institutions such as the Pentagon would face heightened alert calculations, while allied actors reassess exposure. The broader danger lies in momentum. Once escalation accelerates, political space for negotiation narrows dramatically. Leadership survival, technological resilience, and timing would determine whether events spiral outward or stabilize under pressure. History suggests that large-scale confrontations often hinge on a handful of hours where restraint either prevails or collapses. In this case, the stakes extend far beyond one country or one strike scenario. The outcome would influence regional power balances, alliance credibility, and global economic confidence for years to come, proving that in modern geopolitics, the true battlefield is as much about systems, perception, and succession as it is about missiles and force.